Okay, so do you want to admit anybody that...
Thank you very much. We'll do that now.
I'll mute myself.
Okay. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of Southwark's Cabinet. We're meeting in extraordinary circumstances during this COVID-19 crisis. Government legislation has been passed which allows us to meet remotely, both as a cabinet and other committees of the council, such meeting that is taking place. This is a new experience for us all, but given the extraordinary circumstances, I hope people will bear with us. There has been, which has been put in, challenging this method of conducting the meeting by Southwark Law Centre. If Doreen Forrester-Brown is in the meeting, Doreen, I think you've replied to that letter which we
Chair,
received today, and I wonder whether you could just give us a brief response.
Yes, Chair, I'll come in there. First of all, just to say that this is the first meeting of Southwark's Cabinet following the introduction of regulations which allow the Council to conduct virtual, or we call remote meetings. And this procedure has been developed specifically in response to the COVID-19 epidemic. We've carefully considered those regulations, and we were part of working with government to help to draft those regulations. And we have worked with a number of local authorities across London and council to draft up a procedure which, having reviewed it with the proper constitutional officer and other members of my team, I am satisfied that the process and procedure that we've put in place this afternoon comply with those regulations. Just to also be clear, Chair, that members of the public who have wished to participate in this meeting today have been told to contact Virginia Wynne-Jones, from where they can get a link to the public participation section of this meeting. And I would urge anyone who's still viewing now that would like to do that to contact Virginia. I'm satisfied that we will proceed in a lawful manner, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Doreen, for that. I should say that all mics should have been muted by default whilst in the meeting. So don't unmute your microphone unless I call on you to speak, and then remute yourself afterwards. Filming and recording are permitted at our council meetings. This meeting will be recorded and uploaded to Southwark Council's YouTube channel later. I've not received any apologies for absence. I do want to welcome Councillor Jane Salmon. I saw her in the meeting earlier on, and I believe Councillor Helen Dennis is also joining us, both of them from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Urgent items. Item 5, public questions. Item 12, repairs service improvement plan. Item 20, putting residents first review, an update. Item 30, community harm and exploitation reduction plan 2020-21. And item 40, Borough and Bankside social regeneration charter, are items of urgent business which we should be taking at this meeting. I plan to vary the order of business to take item 40 after item 32. We've got a very, very full agenda. It is important, I should stress, even in the face of this crisis, that the council tries to continue to deal with as much ordinary business as possible, so that we're in a position, as soon as this crisis is concluded, to carry on with our programme. There are also changes that we need to implement straight away. We will be conducting items of business in a closed session. Item 37, 38 and 39. Item 37 is a Gateway 1 alternative provision procurement strategy. Item 38, disposal of freehold at 4 Danesford Road. and item 39, acquisition of new housing at Harper Road in the borough. No representations have been received about those. How we're going to conduct that is that this team's meeting will end at the end of the open section of the meeting, and the committee will reconvene separately for the closed session. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or dispensations? Okay, take that silence as being none. Okay, public question time. There was one in-time public question and 8 late public questions. There'll be no supplemental questions. Now, public questions have asked for their questions and responses to be read out loud. They have received their written by email. Where in the papers can I find the questions so that they can be read out aloud? Can somebody point me?
Chair, we were emailed them about 3:30 this afternoon.
The question. Okay, pull them up then. Thank you, Steph. Okay, bear with me.
Paula would have sent them.
Okay. Let me just find them. Okay.
Peter, they're also on the agenda on the website, if you can get onto that.
Okay, I'm just looking at the addendum report.
I've just added a link to that to the chat section of the website.
Thank you very much. Okay, the public questions are, the first question is from Toby O'Connor, and he asks, what are the main challenges and opportunities for public engagement in planning processes in the coronavirus situation, for example, with the current consultations on the statement of community involvement, regeneration charters, the local plan EIP, and planning committee meetings. And there is a response to that, which, as I understand, unless anyone corrects me, has been emailed to Toby, and I think Toby's in the meeting as well, so the answer is available there. There are then a series of late public questions. A question from Asen of Wendover TNRA. She says, I'd like to know what is the council's intention or plan to keep estates clean and hygienic. As I live on Aylesbury Wendover block, there is no cleaning already. Are they going to deep clean each estate where lots of people are living, which makes us more exposed? There is a full response to that. Danielle on the Lindley estate, what happens with urgent repairs for council properties, things like broken boilers, electricity outages, uncontainable leaks? Will the repair service continue operating? Do we continue ringing the call centre in the usual way? How can households, tradespeople ensure they stay safe while social distancing measures are in place? Question 4, June on the Brandon estate. Are there any plans for council tax amnesty? There's talk of mortgage and rent amnesty done by the government service. 3-month relief for leaseholders would offer 3-month amnesty for charges for major works. Heating again would be a big help to leaseholders. Chinello at Bells Gardens estate asks, I have questions around cleaning communal spaces, in particular spaces that aren't often cleaned, if at all, for example, outdoor corridors guarded by balconies and hand railings. Will cleaning protocols be updated to be more inclusive and thorough? Grace at Southampton Way. If the situation gets worse and more staff go off sick, we'll definitely need more care workers, street cleaners, meal delivery, childcare for key workers, housing for homeless. Can the council recruit now to speed up DBS checks and training, etc. where needed? Question from Brian and Lee at Caroline Gardens. For council tenants who lose their employment due to COVID-19, are plans in place to help with rent and council tax? If so, what are the plans and how do you access that help? And the final, maybe it's not the final question, public question from Harpreet. Will you suspend all decisions on the Elephant and Castle shopping centre due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic uncertainty raised by this crisis period? We have entered. The Chancellor has announced help for workers and small businesses. Will you protect business owners, traders and workers alike? There's a full answer on the papers to that question. And then question from Santiago Pelufo Sonera. Will you commit within the next 10 days to make use of funding streams to support the thousands of sole traders and micro businesses who do not qualify for the grants of small businesses and are in desperate need of cash coming to their pockets while they're out of business? And again, a full answer I can point you to there, talking about our business hardship fund, which will be supporting businesses. Some of those other questions came, I think, as a batch from SGTO. I think Kieran Williams spoke to SGTO, if I am right.
Yes, that's right, Peter. I had an interview on Zoom with them where I went through the answers to all of those questions. That interview was recorded, so there is a link, I think, has gone out with the papers where people can listen back to all of the questions being answered.
Thank you very much indeed, Kieran. That's very helpful. So everything is available online, but SGTO did get members did get those questions answered. Just on the final question about support for small businesses, because it is so critical, even though there's a full answer there, if somebody is watching now, it might be helpful. Either Steph Cryan or Vicky Mills, do you want to just say a word or two about that support for small business?
I can, because we've just had the sign off now from the chair of OSC around this, so it's actually live now. So what we've realised is there's been a gap in support for some of the businesses, especially those businesses that have a rateable value of over £51,000 or don't pay business rates. So what we've looked at is what support can we give them over and above for those businesses that aren't eligible for government support. And what we've done is we've repurposed the money that's in our Southwark Pioneers Fund and some of our High Street Challenge money. So we've got around £2 million, and we're going to be giving out small grants to businesses on a sliding scale. So if you're a sole trader, the plan is to give up to £2,500. If you've got up to 5 employees, up to 5,000. If you've got up to 10 employees, around up to £10,000. It should be live on the website tomorrow. It's a very, very simple application form. We're not asking people to jump through hoops. We are asking them to sort of just say what hardship they're sort of experiencing at the moment. Being honest, £2 million will be able to help around 400 businesses. We've also been in touch with the GLA, and we're hoping that if any funding comes forward from the GLA, that we could hopefully add that to this as well. But it's very much something that we're going to roll out tomorrow to try and help as many businesses as possible on this who just can't get any support or help at the moment.
Thanks very much indeed, Steph. Okay, right. Okay, the minutes. Can we agree the open minutes of the meeting which we held on the 4th of February? They appear at pages 2 to 8 of the main agenda. Can we agree that, please, Cabinet?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much indeed. There are no deputation requests today, so we move on to the first substantive item, the living wage.
For a supplemental question.
Sorry?
A supplemental question.
Where?
To question 1 that was sent in on time. Apologies to unmute, but I put it in the text.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I've got an iPad, a phone, and a laptop going, so it's difficult trying to keep on top of what's coming in. Okay, Toby. I did say there would be no supplemental questions today, but as you've asked so nicely.
Okay, thank you. Ready? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I note the written response given at 3:50. For democratic decision-making to be upheld, it's vital that measures are considered and put in place to ensure public engagement is well maintained in this new situation. An overall strategy needs to be produced for new adaptive measures in line with the Council's constitution. The measures should be tailored to the relative urgencies, opportunities and challenges of each element of public engagement. Just an example, the climate crisis item 17, including its engagement approach, etc., doesn't appear to have made any adjustments for the new situation. And similarly, the draft social regen charters haven't been amended, so they have example, like walks and workshops planned for now, like April and May. I've put that in the text, so I won't talk about the consultation events on the state and community involvement. There's a range of stuff. So from my own experience, we're waiting with the Neighbourhood Forum for how a postponed planning committee briefing that we're giving to the committee will itself take shape. So that's on a series of large major applications impacting our area. What material will be shared with us? What time will be given prepare? What form will it take? These kind of questions will apply for planning committee meetings themselves. And the balance of resources between, say, developers and local communities in terms of technology, training and access, these will apply more widely than planning meetings and decisions alone. So will the council commit this evening to an urgent report on how all public engagement will be carried out, focusing first on enabling the climate crisis decision-making and action? It seems pretty urgent. And then temporarily suspend decisions on large major planning applications until a strategic and detailed process has been set up and agreed. Given that we're speaking here this evening, it should be possible for this to happen quickly so that the democratic decision-making and the vital public trust that is involved in that can be upheld in Southwark in this new situation.
Thanks very much, Toby, for that supplemental question. I know that Leo Pollock has sent you a response on Teams in respect of the extension for the social regeneration charters. We are in uncharted territory. We all know that. And clearly, where provision is made within any report for face-to-face consultation, for want of a better word, then obviously steps need to be taken to deal with that in a way, particularly if that consultation has to be concluded before the end of any lockdown or return to normality. So I think we can take it as read in any report that will be the case. With regard to major planning applications, one of the things that the government has been absolutely clear in its direction to local councils is that we should continue to deal with planning and licensing applications. That's why provision has been made for virtual meetings to take place. Clearly, the planning committee will want to be satisfied that consultations have been conducted appropriately before those large planning applications are heard by planning committee. I know that the chair of planning is on this meeting, is watching this meeting, or listening into this meeting today, so he'll be picking up what you have said. But I don't think we can say we're going to put all applications and all business on hold until the crisis is concluded, because I think that would further undermine our economy, which at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that our economy is in the best position possible.
Absolutely, everything
to pick up once things once we're through this crisis. But I hear exactly what you say, and clearly amendments do need to be made to face-to-face consultations in order to
in a strategic and detailed way.
Well, I mean, it will be, at the moment it's going to be on a slightly ad hoc basis, but it will be in line with the regulations which the government published only last Saturday, I think. We will do our best. Okay, guys, I said there'll be no supplemental questions, and we've already taken one, so I'm not going to take any further. But Toby, I know that people are throwing answers at you. That's the advantage of this. I don't even have to call them. They're going to send you messages on the chat in Teams. So please do that. But come back. You know our email address, so come back if you want to discuss this further. But we are going to move to Living Wage Place Action Plan, which starts on page 9 of the agenda. Steph.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a bit of good news in worrying times. So one of our council plan commitments was around doubling the number of living wage employees in the borough by 2022 from 121 to 242, and to make Canada Water and Old Kent Road living wage zones. So to do that, we set up a living wage steering group which had representation from across lots of different sectors, from education, from health, from local businesses, from local developers, living wage employers themselves, and the Living Wage Foundation. And it came really clear to me and apparent to me that as we were going through this, that we were in a really good position as a borough to actually set out an action plan and apply for accreditation to become a living wage place. So this report it's a bit of a retrospective report, but this report sets out what that action plan is and what the outcomes that we want to get to within the next 3 years in that. That report was sent up to the Living Wage Foundation, and I'm really pleased that just before the whole sort of COVID pandemic, it was about the day before sort of lockdown, that we actually got confirmation back from the Living Wage Foundation that we've been accepted for accreditation, and that we are the first local authority to be recognised as a living wage place. I think the benefits of this are really great because it shows we've got a really clear route and pathway into helping support people into having pay uplifts. We've anticipated that by acting out the action plan, we should end up with around 300 companies becoming living wage employers by 2023, and actually, more importantly, over 4,500 more people getting an uplift in their salary. So I'll keep it short, I'll keep it brief, but really this report was to acknowledge the action plan that we're going to be taking forward, and just to acknowledge the fact that we've become the first living wage borough in the country.
Okay, well, in dismal times, it is kind of good news. Any comments on this? Vicky, I don't know whether you wanted to come in on this or a previous item.
No, it was the previous one.
Okay. Okay, well, in that case, and with hope that our local and our London economy will pick up speedily once we're through the worst of this, and that we'll be able to really extend this living wage place action plan and live the living wage borough status that we have fully. Can I see or can I ask if colleagues agree to the recommendations in this report? One recommendation.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Item 9 is a Gateway 1 procurement strategy for adult community specialist drug and alcohol treatment services. This starts at page 17.
Okay, so shall I start, Chair?
Yes, please, Evelyn.
Okay, so this report asks Cabinet to approve the procurement process for adult community specialist drugs and alcohol treatment. The new contract will build upon existing good practice with enhanced focus on making sure we proactively go out and seek those who need alcohol and drug support and do that. However, due to the COVID-19 situation, obviously the procurement project plan will undoubtedly slip. And so we need to kind of revise that. So there's an added recommendation for the leader, which is basically asking you to delegate the final decision for the updated contract commencement date to myself, with on basis of an updated procurement plan. That should have been an addendum report.
Yeah. Okay, colleagues, that's in the addendum report. Anybody want to speak on this? Nobody's indicated. If you do want to indicate, could you just indicate in the meeting chat, please, that you want to speak? Nobody has indicated, so we'll move to the recommendations. In that case, there's one recommendation that CAMP approves an EU light touch regime competitive procurement process as outlined in the report. Can we agree that, please? Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
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 Any against? I should have asked. No. Any abstentions? No. And then there's a recommendation for me to delegate the final decision, as Evelyn indicated in her introduction to her, following the creation of an updated procurement plan with revised anticipated dates, and I agree that. Okay, item 10, Policy and Resources Strategy Capital Monitoring Report, including the Capital Programme 2019-20. Vicky.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are agreeing today the latest monitoring report on our capital budget, and that does include quite a lot of new things being added onto the capital programme. So our housing investment programme is worth nearly £2 billion. Our general fund capital programme is worth nearly £700 million. And today, in a time of really much horridness, we're agreeing some really positive things. So a multi-million-pound tree planting programme, huge new investment in our school streets and closure programme, more investment in air quality, more investment in electrical charging points. So some really positive things when we're thinking of the kind of environmental and climate challenges we face going forward. And also a £5 million additional investment in play and sports facility, particularly for our young people, and for our young people who've lived through austerity and who are now living through however many months of lockdown. I think this is something really positive to look forward to when we come out the other side of COVID-19. Almost inevitably, all of our capital programmes are going to fall behind the schedule, I think, that is set out in the current appendices. I don't know if officers are here at the moment and they could perhaps advise, but I think at the moment, you know, we should agree the capital report, but we should be aware that I think it is unlikely that we're going to make the planned expenditures as set out in the appendices, although obviously, you know, that there will be opportunity to catch up on this in future years.
Thanks, Vicky. Duncan is in the meeting. Duncan, do you want to say anything as Finance Director? No.
Oh yeah, this sorry. Oh no, that's Leo.
Duncan's here, but he's on mute. Anyway, well, he can come in if need be. But Leo, would you like to make a comment then?
Oh,
there's Duncan. Duncan.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
I was just endorsing everything that Vicky said. Actually, there will be slippage in this programme. It does, however, commit to the priorities that the Cabinet has expressed previously. It's going to be some months before we're able to really rationalise quite where we are in programme. But so hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll have a better view. But we will, I think, need to reset, not in terms only of the slippage, but also the capacity as we come out of COVID-19 to just kick the programme off immediately, that we're all back at work. So I've got nothing further to report at the moment other than here's a programme. It's continues to be the Council's commitment, and now we need to just get on and reprogram and reprioritise it as we come out the other end.
Thank you very much indeed, Duncan. And Leo has a brief comment.
Thanks, Peter. Very brief. I just wanted to draw attention to there are so many things to celebrate, obviously, in this report, but in particular, just be a little parochial, the fact that we're committing to funding the opening of a new cinema at the Blue. The Blue is a high street that's been struggling for very many years. People have been desperate to see a big major anchor tenant move into the area, and when we were able to announce it, it caused a huge buzz, and I think it's going to be a really important part of the recovery plan for that high street after the restrictions are lifted. So just a huge thank you to Vicky, Duncan, Steve Platts, to Dan Taylor, who oversaw the competition for it, and everyone who's been involved.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, unless anyone else wants to comment, we can move to the recommendations. Recommendations 1 to 5 on page 41. Can we agree those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 11, the Housing Repairs Service, which is a report from Southwark Housing Scrutiny Commission. I think this is going to be Kieran, is it?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, it's just to welcome the report that was put together by Scrutiny Commission, chaired by Councillor Gavin Edwards, which sets out some detailed recommendations on how we can improve our housing repair service. We've taken on board all of these recommendations in the next agenda item, which is our repairs improvement plan, and picked them up. And I think it's been just a really helpful contribution to making sure we improve the quality of the service. Thank
you very much indeed for that, Kieran. Okay, so can we unless anyone has anything to say on this, we are asked to note the recommendations and, yeah, note and consider those recommendations. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Which then takes us very neatly into the repair service improvement plan, Kieran, item 12, which starts on the supplemental agenda number 1, page 3.
And Vicky might want to also speak on this one, but just to say this sets out a very detailed plan to set out how we can improve our repairs improve our repairs service. We've obviously been on a journey with this service, brought this service in-house a year and a half ago now, as our aim to put it on a stable footing and ensure we can deliver really high quality service for our residents. But we're also conscious that there are many things in the service that do need to continue to improve. This plan sets out how they will do that, and that's right down from making sure that when you book a repair, it's easy to book it, that in the long term you'll be able to make sure you can track that online and see where your appointment is, know when someone will come round, change appointments at times that are convenient and easy for you, improve the quality of the repairs that are done, the training and skill up our workforce to have the right skills to be able to do repairs first time when they come round to do them, and to make sure that residents have oversight and involvement in shaping the service in the long term. Clearly, like other things we've said at the moment, some of the timelines in the plan are set out will need to change as we're having to do things very differently at the moment. And it is worth saying right now, while the lockdown is in place, we have moved to an emergency only repairs service, so that the service is running. It is doing emergency repairs for people. That's things like heating, serious leaks, etc. The call centre is open. If you call up, they will advise you what is emergency and what isn't emergency. But we have had to make that reduction in service for the short term. But over the long term, this plan really sets out a clear vision for how we improve the service.
Thanks very much indeed, Kieran. I was notified earlier on today by Harriet Harman of 1, 2, 3, something like 5 blocks where we're having trouble with hot water at the moment, and obviously it's critical that people are able to wash their hands in hot water at this time. Can you give us any reassurance as to how repairs such as emergency hot water repairs are going, and whether they're being dealt with in a timely fashion?
Yes, so as I say, we are continuing with emergency repairs. That does include any block outages for heating or hot water. They're continuing the service as normal, and certainly those that I've been aware of have been resolved as they would normally be. I haven't looked at those specific ones, Peter, so if you can send me the details, I'll make sure that I chase them up.
Thank you very much indeed, Kieran. Okay, anyone else want to comment on this report? Okay, nobody's turning up. In which case, we move to the recommendations. There are 3 recommendations to agree the repairs improvement plan and note the progress in implementing the plan, be reported quarterly to the cabinet member, etc. Can we agree those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And then there's a recommendation for me that the leader delegates authority to the cabinet member for housing management and modernisation to update the repairs improvement plan to strengthen it as work on it progresses and further specific improvements and actions are identified. And I agree that recommendation. Okay. Right. We now have response to the recommendations of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the Brandon estate. This is a report that starts on page 69, I think, of our agenda. I know that Jane is here. I don't know whether Helen Dennis is in the meeting as well, but whether either of them have any responses to this report. But I'll ask Evelyn to introduce it briefly.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In October 2019, I attended a Brandon community meeting after the murder of a young boy there, and a range of concerns were raised at that meeting. And subsequently, the council appointed a director to lead on Brandon Estate, and I took on the responsibility as lead cabinet member to oversee this work. This allowed us to have a more or less of a seamless approach to coordinate work and to ensure that work is being done in a timely fashion. Ward councillors subsequently referred this matter to scrutiny, and they raised and made a series of recommendations, which is included in the report. So what this report is asking Cabinet to do is to agree the recommendation and also note the progress of action. A lot of work has been done so far, and we are fortunate, good communications and good relationship with the community, but there's still outstanding work to do, and we are confident that we will be able to finalise everything post COVID-19.
Thank you very much indeed, Evelyn. Helen points out quite rightly she was on maternity leave when this was discussed at OSC. So any comments? I'll come to Jane Salmon. Jane, do you want to say anything on this report? Are you satisfied with its response?
Thank you so much, Chair. Yes, I think this is the best we can do at the moment for the Brandon. There's so many problems and there's so many issues that I think this. I appreciate this report. And I think this is, I don't know if anyone's heard from any of the residents on the Brandon about the report. Evelyn, have you heard anything? Has anybody said anything?
No, they haven't responded, no.
Okay, if there is any response from them, we'd appreciate knowing about it. But thank you for this. This is appreciated. I think it's a good start.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Well, we are asked to agree the recommendations, which is a very simple one, to agree the recommendations arising from the report. That's the recommendation on page 69. Can we agree that, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Any against? Any abstentions? Got to remember to do that. Okay, adult social care, fairer contributions policy. Jasmine Ali.
Thank you, Chair. You've all got the report. The Care Act 2014 allows us some discretion when it comes to charging for social care outside the care home. In a nutshell, we had a consultation on this policy, which we've been working with for about 3 years. A year ago, we had a consultation with, obviously, people who use adult social care and their families and key stakeholders, and we've got before you a raft or a schedule of reforms designed to simplify the fairer contributions policy. So I'm not going to go through them all, but very popular is a proposed change in the minimum contribution towards social care costs from £3 to £5, a standard charge of £200 to full cost service users for council arranged non-residential services, and so on. I mean, unlike health, social care has always been a means-tested service, so people are expected to contribute. So the attached financial plan, I mean, it is going to improve things, but it must be seen in context of the whole, financial problems that we have. And I and others, I mean, many of you on the Cabinet have already written to government saying that they've got to change the way that they do, the way that they finance social care. Duncan's in the meeting, he too has written, and we've been asking for the green paper, and we're carrying on with the lobbying. But in the meantime, could you please agree this so that we can improve things a little bit, incrementally?
Thank you very much indeed, Jasmine, for that introduction. Okay, does anyone want to speak on this? Nobody has indicated on the meeting chat. So there are 5 recommendations for us here on page 77 of the agenda. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Please say agreed.
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 Okay.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. There's one recommendation for me as the leader to delegate the final decision on the future of the direct debit discount scheme to the Cabinet Member for Children's Schools and Adult Care following a further consultation on this process. I agree with that recommendation.
Thank you, Leader.
Okay, item 15, Gateway 1 procurement strategy approval, re-ablement services.
Okay, it's me again. Thank you.
Speaking with you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, reablement then. It's the official title given to short-term care at home to aid recovery, usually after discharge from hospital. You'll all know that the Southwark Reable team is made up of representatives from health and social care, and it really is a jewel in our crown. I won't go through the reasons now, but you know, people are so satisfied with this service. Okay, because it helps people to live independently. Okay, the original contract is coming to an end, so this paper is not just about renewal of a good thing. There's also another part of it, which is actually calling for to set out the procurement strategy for the review, but we're also adding an occupational therapy team, which basically the service has taken notice of us when we asked where possibly could you do this in-house. So we're going to have a new occupational therapy team in-house, and that reablement services play a key role in minimising the effect of disability and deterioration, and this new occupational therapy team will bolster the work that we do. So again, I ask you if you will accept the recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed, Jasmine. And again, never more important than at this time, do we need people to help those who are being discharged from hospital, a big part of the way in which we're protecting the NHS at this time. So a critical bit of work that continues through this very difficult period. Nobody's indicated to speak on this report. So there are 4 recommendations on page 93 of the agenda. Can we agree those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anybody against? Any abstentions? No, thank you very much. Superb. I think we're staying with you, Jasmine, because then we've got another procurement, Gateway 1, the provision of learning disability support and accommodation services.
Thank you very much. Okay, Gateway 1, provision of learning disabilities, support and accommodation services. I mean, we know that many people with learning disabilities do and can live perfectly independent lives, meaningful lives. Other people with learning disabilities need more intensive support. So while support needs may differ, people with learning disabilities who need our support, this is what that paper's about. So the council provides social care packages in and out of the borough to around 650 people with learning disabilities who have a diverse range of needs. And annually, we spend a circa 12.6 million. This report seeks to approve the procurement strategy of learning disabilities accommodation-based support and an outreach contract for a period of 5 years plus 2 years. So basically that would be 10.9 million. And when it all comes out in the wash, you can see the figures there. We're looking at 76.3 million. So this is an opportunity to formalise arrangements, and we will be paying improving the service, paying the London living wage and implementing everything we wanted to with the ethical care charter. So basically it's a win-win for all the people that we support our services to, but also to the staff that are working in those services. So again, you know, in a quite a bleak period, this is a very positive report, and I hope that you can all support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jasmine. No one's indicated on the meeting chat. Type now if you want to be heard. Otherwise, we can move to the recommendations. A query for Doreen on this one. Just recommendation 2, as I look at it, the Cabinet improves the delegation of the award decision to the Strategic Director of Children and Adult Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children, Schools and Adult Care. Is that one for Cabinet to delegate, or is it one for Leader to delegate?
It's because it's Cabinet to a Chief Officer. That's fine for Cabinet to do so, Peter.
Okay, there we are. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so there are two recommendations. Can we agree those, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Any against? Any abstentions? Very good. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, well, until about 3 weeks ago, the biggest issue that we were debating was climate change and climate strategy. But it's still vitally important and will be again when we're through this crisis. So we now have a report delivering a climate strategy for Southwark update. Richard.
Thank you, Peter. As you rightly say, we can't forget in the current emergency that we've got a longer term emergency that we need to be dealing with, and one potentially that has far bigger consequences for us. As I often remind people, 60% of Southwark is less than 10 metres above sea level. So we really are at the front line of the climate emergency as sea levels rise, as global warming happens. So it is really important that we in Southwark are doing as much as we possibly can. I think we can't do it all, but it is very important, I think, first of all, that we are doing everything we can. Secondly, I think it's important that we're trying to do all we can to change people's behaviour who live within the borough. And thirdly, we need to be working with others to try and affect change as well. And you'll see in the report, there's details about how we're working with other London councils. Clearly, lobbying is a key part of all of this as well. But I think it is important we're acting as an exemplar in all of this. It's probably worth flagging up to people that in the addendum report, there is a new recommendation to help us in terms of the process while we're in the emergency situation, because we know we've got to adapt how we engage with people in that process. Clearly, we did hope to have a borough conference back on the 21st of March, which we've had to postpone. We're looking to see how we can reinstitute that at a later date. But I do think whilst the method of engagement is going to have to change, we shouldn't be losing pace in all of this. It's important in an emergency that we're moving forward quickly and still moving towards having a strategy in place by July. It may be that some of the actions in that strategy we need to consult further with the community at a later stage, and we'll need to work out the details of all of that. There's also in the addendum some information about the engagement work we've been doing with the new partnership steering group. Clearly, we've had to stop the meetings of that as well, but we're looking at how we can continue to engage with that useful group. And the report also talks about establishing a working group of councillors across party that would be establishing and agreeing these recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard, and very good to see that you're keeping up standards by wearing a tie and jacket for this meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very important.
It's good.
It's very important. Okay. Any comments, please, on this report? It is really critical for the future of the borough and of London and of the country, and will become so again once we are, as Richard said, through this emergency. So there are 3 recommendations in the. Helen Dennis would like to ask a question. Helen.
Right, sorry about that. Thanks very much for the updated report, Richard. Just from a scrutiny perspective, as you know, we did the report over a year ago, I guess now, on the community energy part of it. And going through the report, I know that, and obviously it's on the next part of the agenda as well in terms of the commitment around procurement of gas and electricity. But I wondered if you could say a little bit on where those pilot projects have got to, because obviously there were some problems facing a number of them, and I didn't know whether or not you could give a bit more detail on where they had got to.
Thank you, Helen. We, as you say, we've had some teething issues with the pilots that we've looked at. We are trying to take that work forward, but what Kieran Williams and I have agreed with officers is actually we need to have a rethink about this and just refocus the work on trying to ensure that we have as much renewable energy as possible on our estates, and rather than getting too tied up in whether the community energy model is the right way of doing this, refocusing our efforts on making sure we have as much renewable energy as possible and seeing what role our estates can play in that. So we're expecting a report to come forward in the summer from the Housing Department on that.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Thank you. Good to see you. Okay, in that case, unless anyone else indicates, we have got 4 recommendations in total, 3 which are on page 126 to 127 of the main agenda, and then there's recommendation 4 in the addendum report. So can we agree those recommendations, please? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thanks very much, Richard. And we stay with you for a procurement strategy approval supply of gas and electricity to Southwark Council. And this is on page 142.
Thank you, Chair. One of the first things that we need to do, having just agreed the way forward on the climate emergency, is to look at how we as a council can be better in terms of having renewable energy. And this report lays the groundwork to enable us to do that. So this was a procurement strategy for our gas and electricity. Doing this through the joint London Energy Project and the laser framework enables us to make savings of 30 to 30% on our energy costs as a council, but more importantly, it's going to enable us to purchase energy which is 100% renewable. This is enabling us to go forward to that. There'll need to be a later Gateway 2 decision to actually approve that, but this enables us to move forward on that piece of work. Just one other quick aside, paragraph 62 is the council's first ever environment and sustainability concurrent report. So we've been discussing as part of the climate emergency strategy about how we need to look at each and every decision the council makes, looking at its impact in terms of the climate emergency. And so this is the first report to do so. You'll be seeing many more in the future.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, nobody's indicated on the meeting chat, so there are 2 recommendations here on page 142. Can we agree those recommendations? Those agreeing, please?
Agreed.
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 Anybody against?
Agreed.
Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Thank you very much. Okay, we go to Vicky Mills for the next report, page 155, which is a consultation on proposals for the private rented sector 2020 to 2026.
Thank you very much. I'm not on mute. Okay, so this is a really good reason why we are meeting today. So this is to begin the consultation about our proposals to expand and renew our licensing in the private rented sector. And the private rented sector now makes up, I think, over a third of the housing in the borough. And oh, sorry, I've got a tea delivery. Apologies.
Thanks, Kev.
And you know, going back to being very serious again, you know, we're absolutely clear that everybody who lives in Southwark deserves a warm, dry and safe place to call home, including those who are living in the private rented sector. So here is a key way that we can drive up standards in that sector. And there are kind of 3 different schemes that we want to put out to consultation. We have operated a mandatory licensing scheme in Southwark since 2006, so we are just proposing to renew that. Since 2016, we've had an additional licensing scheme which allows us to license all HMOs in the borough, and again we're proposing a renewal of that. And then finally, we've again since 2016 had a selective licensing scheme in the borough, and where that is in place, all private rented dwellings need to be licensed. We're going to go out for consultation with 2 proposals on this. One is a kind of expansion of what we currently do and covers probably about half the borough, and the other proposal is for a borough-wide licensing scheme. So we're proposing that we go out for both of those and see what people say in response, with the view that our 3 new schemes hopefully should be in place by 1st of January next year, though I know that that is going to be incredibly tight now because we're slightly delayed, and I think getting a response out of central government as a result of our consultation is going to be a little bit delayed too. I don't know if officers are in the call, whether they can give a little bit of an update on how we think the consultation is going to take place because of COVID-19, and also whether they know if they've had any information from central government about possible delays to the response we might get.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. Any officers want to come forward on this? Who would it be? Who would it be?
David Littleton or Emma Trott, or I don't know if Mick Lucas is, or Caroline Bruce are on the call. If they're not, that's fine. I know that we have to go ahead with the consultation. I think a great deal of it would have been online anyway, and this will probably mean that nearly all of it will have to be online. But I do think that it's vitally important that we get an expanded licensing scheme in place next year. So I think it's something we need to take on the challenge of doing as much of this virtually as possible.
This will be ultimately a decision by MHLG, presumably.
Yeah. So we go out to consultation, and then the consultation will kind of shape our final submission to the Secretary of State.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Well, I mean, MHLG are completely overwhelmed by work at the moment as we are on COVID-19, but we need to get it in there in tray, don't we, for when things do return to normal. There are 5 recommendations, colleagues. No one's indicated to speak. Page 155 to 156. All those in favour?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anybody against?
Agreed.
Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? No. Okay. Putting residents first review, which appears on the supplemental number 1 agenda at page 28 with 4 recommendations. And I think this is Kieran.
It is, yes. So this is our framework that we have in place to ensure that residents have a really strong say in major works that happen to their blocks. This paper sets out the process for reviewing and updating that process to strengthen the way that residents get involved. You'll see that it particularly sets out 2 things. One, that we put in place some improvements as of now for the major works that will be happening in the near future, which I'll come back to in a moment. And secondly, it sets out a more detailed process for working with a wide range of leaseholders and tenants to look at how we make sure we get that process right into the future. The key things we put in place for now are making sure that when major works start, before they start, we do a proper ask of residents, what is it that they'd like to see improve in their blocks, and set up a resident project group before the works start. So that's what will be happening for any new works that happen from now onwards. And then from then on inwards, residents should have a full chance to look at the full detail of the specification that's worked up, to give their views on that alongside the professional building experts about what needs to be done to buildings to make them in a good condition. Right down to being able to look at the detail of the works once they're completed to make sure that they're of good quality and they're happy with them. It is also worth, again, at this point saying, in terms of major works, we have stopped most major works now because of the coronavirus. We continue to finish off any works that were being done in people's homes, but we're not starting any new works inside people's homes at all now. And we do have a small number of works that are still on site where they can be done without any risk to residents in those blocks. So there, a small number are continuing, but in ways where people are wearing personal protective equipment and operating in ways that are well thought through to make sure that the risk to residents is entirely managed.
Thanks, Kieran, and thanks for that further comment. Anybody want to speak on this report? Okay, otherwise there are 4 recommendations on page 28 of supplemental agenda number 1. Can we agree those, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anybody against?
Agreed.
And any abstentions? Fine, that's carried. There's also a recommendation for me to delegate the final decision for the timing of the putting residents first review to the Cabinet Member for Housing Management and Modernisation, following the creation of an updated consultation calendar, and I agree that. Okay, we move now to important piece of work, Southwark Great Estates Guarantee, and Leo Pollock.
Thank you. Am I on? Yep, I'm on.
Yep.
This is a big report that's been months, maybe years in the making, and really collaborative effort across the council. This is all about the fact that our Great Estates programme has reset our vision for the future of Southwark Council estates to expand and enrich our estates towards making them the most prized spaces to live in the borough and in London, and also that we've initiated a new estate improvement plans across dozens of estates, which are well placed now to pull towards our pledge to ensure that our estates are properly safe, clean and cared for, as was in our council plan. So the report that we have in front of us does two things. One that Kieran might want to speak to. It brings together a review of our service level standards, describing a new set of resident and council responsibilities to go out to consultation on. But it also brings forward 4 key new initiatives designed to elevate ours, the council's and residents' expectations of our council estates, and carving out the route towards making our council estates better places to live. So firstly, and this follows the recruitment of 2 community gardening coordinators, we'll be establishing a new allotment expansion guarantee on our council estates. This means that where residents want to establish new, secure food growing plots on their estate, and where residents' maintenance plan can be properly demonstrated, we will enable this. We've already been working with existing gardening and growing networks and horticulturalists across the borough, and we'll also be developing alongside this a new council-run allotment waiting list. Just from the 7 pilot estates that we've been working on, we've already identified 90 secure food growing plots. On those 7 estates, we have 260, so the scale of this initiative could be really significant. And this is crucially not only a way of creating new security on communal areas in our estates, but creating a new infrastructure for healthy, sustainable food growing and food security for our borough. Secondly, we're establishing a new waste infrastructure standard. So we know that many of our blocks were built to handle a much smaller volume of waste than is now the case, and it's widely understood that the importance of how refuse arrangements can affect the psychology of estate living and people's perception of their home. So to this end, we're describing here a new standard that ensures that any bins that are poorly located, overflowing or in a state of disrepair meet a new positive standard at the next asset management round or earlier. We also include a new standard for bins that are located next to block entrances, that they have to be in exemplary condition. And in the pilots, we're experimenting with new kinds of bin design and stores on our estates. Thirdly, we're developing a new guide for all our major works operatives, wayleave and infrastructure engineers on how to touch a council block. This is guidance that will specify how works on our estates leave a block in exemplary condition and respect the form and appearance of our blocks. We know that there's an accumulation of a lot of external elements that have damaged the appearance of many of our council estates, and we'll be detailing this in an important guide in the upcoming housing asset management strategy that I've been working on with Kieran this summer. But the key thing in this is really to extend on how we do cabling and tracking on new and existing infrastructure, how it's signed off, as well as incorporating painting and cleaning into the scope of works during any major works that come forward. And fourthly and finally, we'll be piloting a new estate-wide lighting strategy with some lightscape experts on one of our estate improvement plan pilot estates to basically soften and secure the unsafe spots on that estate. This is the kind of thing that would have been rolling out at great speed and enthusiasm now if it weren't for the restrictions we had in place, but there will be a series of night walks and lighting workshops with residents. It's on the Brandon estate, so it's very relevant to what Evelyn was talking about earlier. And so that's the fourth one. These are all really key programmes that I think will drive forward a wider agenda of working with residents in the spirit of putting residents first, as Kieran was talking about, and really bringing forward practical initiatives that will improve the look and feel of many of our council estates, and hopefully meet that aspiration we have that we share with residents to make our estates the truly prized spaces in our city.
Thank you very much indeed. Leo and Kieran was going to speak on this item as well.
Just to briefly add, I think this is a really important paper. We've been on this journey with our council homes. A decade ago, only just over half of them met the Decent Home Standard. Over the last 10 years, we've brought them up so it's 98% meeting the Decent Home Standard. But we know having a great place to live is about much more than the basic standard of your home, it being warm, dry and safe. This is really setting out really articulately for people in the standard at the back what you can expect if you're living on a council house, no matter where it is in the borough, whether that comes to cleaning, support for your tenants and residents association, waste, the whole nature of the estate. And I think it's a really important guarantee that is based really strongly on the feedback we've had from residents about the things that matter to them about their estates.
Great stuff. Thank you very much indeed, Kieran and Leo. And this was an important pledge that we made to residents in 2018. It feels good to be delivering on it now. Okay, anyone else want to speak? Did I hear somebody? Nobody's indicated on the chat. Okay, in which case we'll move to the recommendations. 5 recommendations on page 178 and 179 rather. Can we agree those 5 recommendations? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, none. Right. We stay with Councillor Pollock for routes to 11,000, a new council homes strategy for Southwark. This starts on page 187
Apologies for the
of our
interruption.
agenda paper.
Apologies for the interruption. Councillor John, you have one recommendation for you.
I do. Let's go back. On the Great Estates Guarantee, there's a recommendation for me to delegate authority to the Cabinet Member for Social Regeneration, Great Estates and New Council Homes to approve the Great Estates Guarantee following consultation, and I agree that recommendation. Thank you very much, Virginia. Okay, we go back to item 22, routes to 11,000, new council home strategy for Southwark and Leo Pollock.
Thank you, Peter. This is another mega report that's been many months and years in the making. So we're in the midst of a public health emergency, but when that public health emergency is overcome, we return to a climate emergency and a housing emergency. We have unaffordability, indecent standards, insecurity marking so much housing in the city, in our borough, creating intolerable health and financial pressures and overcrowding for so many of our residents. And our generational commitment to delivering 11,000 council homes is a key part of our response to be that countervailing force in a lopsided housing economy. At times, people have found the commitment to 11,000 to be incredulous and bonkers, but I'm really proud that in the last months and years, we have grown our development team. We have made this commitment a reality. We've had the greatest commitment to design excellence with a refreshed design guide, 2 new architect frameworks, giving us access to world-class housing architects, blooding the best new design talent in the UK. We've created a new way of framing the development process, so we always expand an estate as part of a wider estate improvement plan, informed by a brief written with and by residents. And that mobilisation has now seen over 1,000 council homes complete or under construction, albeit many of those construction sites have now paused, and a pipeline of active projects across over 200 sites, delivering well over 3,000 council homes, and an emerging pipeline beyond that that takes us over half the way to that target ahead of schedule. And I just have to say the efforts of the project managers, the directors, everybody in the New Homes team, certainly since the coronavirus restrictions have been in place, have been phenomenal. Council house development is all about momentum, and I've just been absolutely totally overwhelmed. I can't admire them enough. But the key thing in this strategy that needs to be described is that it describes a number of routes and options that we will unfurl over the years ahead.
Thank you. Did we lose Leo there?
Yes, I think we did.
It felt like he was midstream.
Yeah.
But he was, as I had no doubt he was speaking passionately about the way in which we deliver 11,000 council
I'm
homes.
here, Peter.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, we heard I think everything apart from the last 2 seconds.
Peter.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can.
You can.
We can hear you. So speak, please.
Good.
Do.
I will continue. So this report defines our priorities for new land purchases. It describes the types of partnerships that we're developing with faith groups, with adjacent landowners, with large institutional landowners like the Dulwich Estate, even with people like the Port of London Authority. There's a project on the river that is starting to gain momentum. It also describes how we share development capacity with large builders like TfL and British Land, as well as housing cooperatives, TMOs and strategic community partners like the Leather Market, J&B, who we have 9 sites with. It also sets out, and I think the economics of housing are going to, I think, look very, very different as the restrictions are lifted and this new economy emerges. But it sets out the extent to which we are constrained with our housing investment environment at present to deliver 11,000 and at least keep the momentum going. So we are describing in this report the council's red lines and green lights for allowing private money into council house building through what's called a new fixed rate housing standard. So it ensures that all new funding options always deliver additionality and are always delivering the same high quality council managed, lifetime secure social rent homes that have become the hallmark of our programme. We also define much more clearly than before the fundamental mission of Southwark's New Homes programme. It's to explicitly maximise the supply and proportion of social and affordable homes as far as the programme-wide viability will allow. We also describe our ambitions to achieve carbon negative development with new standards for energy efficiency and initiatives for lowering the embodied energy of council home schemes, as well as a pioneering approach to doing nature recovery plans on every project to broaden the habitats that we're providing for through our developments. This also extends to bringing forward at scale, low waste, low impact forms of development such as rooftop housing and obviously river dwellings that I've mentioned as well. We also in this report, we set in train a refresh of our Charter of Principles, the basis on which we consult on new homes projects, mainly to deepen our engagement with residents and enable a much more flexible range of engagement methods suited to the needs of interests of residents affected by each council homes project. It's been really satisfying the last few days and the last 2-3 weeks to be doing remote meetings with residents, including older residents who aren't necessarily tech literate previously, talking about our council homes, looking at plans, describing the types of improvements and opportunities and issues that we need to be looking at for bringing forward new council homes. So this report presents a lot of the learning the council has accumulated from projects to date, as well as from residents and from our partners, and it creates the broadest possible benefit to residents from council house building, and crucially it secures that legacy of that historic commitment to 11,000 and embeds the commitment ever more deeply as a core mission of the council. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much indeed, Leo. Steph Grant has a couple of questions on this item.
Yeah, just a couple ones. Leo, in the actual strategy itself, it says that 2,500 homes are fully fundable by the HRA. Given the implications of COVID-19, the fact that there'll be many residents who are at this moment struggling to pay their rent, and we're around that's going to have an impact on the HRA. So are we going to factor that into actually that number may have to be revised down in terms of fully funded by the HRA? And if so, how will we make up the funding difference on that one? And the other question I've got is a little bit more straightforward. We're looking at I'm looking at a refresh of our digital strategy. Going to be bringing it now in the autumn to Cabinet. But one of the things that's come out of that from the initial consultations is the need to maybe incorporate smart technology and smart homes into our new home building programme to actually save costs further down the line. So I'm just wondering that isn't actually articulated in this report, and I'm just wondering whether there'll be a commitment to that as well.
Happy to answer that. So on the programme-wide viability and the hit that we're taking to the HRA, absolutely. And it's part of the reason why we have a lot to describe in this report and in this strategy about the different kinds of financing options that we want to bring forward. Obviously, at the minute, we use Section 106 receipts, we use HRA debt, and that position obviously improved when the debt cap was lifted a year and a half ago. And we'll be continuing to lobby really hard for reforms to right to buy, huge increases in the amount of grant that's made available, and the all-important land compensation reform that will make us be able to meet that pledge much better. But the beauty of this strategy is that it has rolling action plans alongside it that can always adapt to the changing factors that are in front of us, because obviously, you know, think of the last few years, things are changing month on month, year on year in terms of programme viability. This virus is a factor unlike any other, and I think it will hopefully change the fundamentals of our housing economy in a positive way, but let's see. On the digital strategy and the importance of smart technologies, I entirely agree with you. We've had meetings about this to incorporate it in the New Homes Design Guide. It's really important, and it's really great that you've been championing this. The key thing really here is that we are future-proofing our homes so that they can incorporate new infrastructure standards as and when they're brought forward. And that will certainly be part of the brief for architects and for builders for all projects coming forward.
Okay, and Kieran has a point.
Just to very briefly say, I think this is one of the most important things we're doing. I think this crisis of the coronavirus has just highlighted quite how deep the housing crisis in London is. We've had over 200 new people come onto the streets in Southwark over the last few weeks, who've ended up, for various different reasons, finding themselves homeless, and we've had to house them. We have a completely broken housing market, and we have a service that's doing a phenomenal job helping those people into self-contained accommodation, and we have housed, as I say, over 200 recently. But long-term, what we need is homes that people can afford, that are decent quality homes that they can live in and be secure in.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what the mission is about. Okay, with that in mind, and no one else indicating, can we agree the 5 recommendations which are on page 188 of this report, please? Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Anybody against?
Agreed.
Any abstentions? Right, thank you. Okay, and there's a recommendation for the leader, that the leader delegates the Cabinet Member Social Regeneration, Great Estates and New Council Homes the agreement of a revision of the consultation process in the Charter of Principles to allow for a more tailored approach that allows for a more meaningful consultation and also allows for a wider range of engagements techniques to be used. Lots of allowing there, but I will allow that by agreeing to it.
Allow.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Okay, we now have a trio of reports on the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre, starting with the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre Progress Report, and Councillor Johnson-Sittu.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note and echo the points that were made earlier, actually, you know, during this difficult time, it's going to be important for residents, businesses, and also the voluntary sector that we support them through this difficult time. But where possible, it will also be important that we do take decisions, because we'll also be looked to chart a course for recovery as well. And these 3 reports very much look to our ambition as a borough. So the first report looks at the Elephant and Castle update report, and particularly the shopping centre. It's been a long-held ambition for us as a council to see the Elephant and Castle revitalised, particularly the town centre. The SPD was adopted in 2011 by the Labour Council, and since then there has been a number of developments. So we've seen 2,000 affordable homes generally built in that area. We've seen a number of new jobs, over 1,000, particularly mostly go into local people, which is really important. And just in January, we took a decision to jointly fund with TfL additional improvements to the Elephant and Castle underground station, which will enable the Bakerloo line to be delivered after this difficult moment. But more importantly, this report highlights our commitment that we announced in January about the additional support for Elephant and Castle shopping centre traders, which is £200,000. And when I announced it in January, it was really important then, but what has transpired since then means that it's even more important now. And together with the support that Steph's talked about earlier in respect of support for businesses right across the borough, we know that this will be really important in the weeks ahead in supporting the traders. So that's it in a nutshell for the first report.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't think anyone wants to speak on this report, though people will come in on subsequent reports. So there are 3 recommendations on page 196 of the agenda, actually on page 197. Can we agree those 3 recommendations, please, in that report? Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much indeed. Any against? Any abstaining? Okay. Thank you very much. We move then, Johnson, to the item 24, Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre compulsory purchase order.
Thank you, Chair. Again, following on from the report earlier, it's been a long-held ambition for a council to see the area revitalised, and since then, the shopping centre planning application has gone in, and it was approved by planning committee a number of years ago. And this report is asking Cabinet to resolve to make a compulsory purchase order. Now, to give some context behind this decision, a number of interests have been resolved, and most of the interests have been resolved. The remaining large commercial entities are Transport for London, the Archco, and EDF. The majority of the interests have been resolved, and the CPO is largely a protective measure which establishes the framework and timetable to enable the developer to complete agreements with these parties in a timely fashion. So it's really important to highlight that this is just the start of that journey, but it allows there to be a clear timeline in respect of when these decisions could come to forward, and also when these discussions can come to a conclusion.
Thank you very much indeed, Johnson. Steph Crine has a question first.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think it's really important also to say that I think we've all had a lot of emails and tweets this week around the situation with the traders in the centre, and I just really wanted to reconfirm our absolute commitment to helping supporting the traders through this period. The previous report, we've just agreed the £200,000 fund, which we'll be able to distribute as soon as the statutory 5-day calling period is over. And I announced earlier around the business hardship fund, which very much hope that some of those traders in Elephant Castle will successfully apply for. But I really just wanted to reconfirm the commitment that we have to help support all those traders in the centre in whatever way we can around that, and that this CPO won't diminish our commitment to them at all.
Absolutely, and you know this because we've been involved in many of those discussions, but we're absolutely committed to supporting the traders, and we've pressed the developer at many occasions to ensure that additional support, £635,000 is the minimum. I'm pleased to see that they've said that that's the minimum, matched with the additional funding that we've talked about, the £200,000, which is really important, and also the dedicated support through Tree Shepherd and business advice means that it's not by all means all sorted, but we're absolutely committed to supporting every trader to get to a point where they can thrive.
Thank you, Johnson. And Evelyn has a question on this report.
So following on from Steph's question, obviously we've all been subject to lobbying from protesters, and a lot of them have been saying that the CPO is actually forcing out traders. Is this the case?
Thank you, and that's a really, really important question, and I highlighted it in my email to Latin Elephant. And I think it's important to know that the decision to close the shopping centre is one made by the owner, and it's a decision that they've come to in light of their planning application, and it's irrespective of any decision that the council cabinet will take. Now, most of the interests, as I talked about in the report, have been resolved through the owner, and credit to them in terms of making those negotiations. This CPO decision is very much setting the timeline and the framework for the larger interests, such as Archco, such as TfL, and such as EDF. And it's really important to differentiate between the decisions that have already been made and the additional support that we have committed to traders, and this decision that we're making today to ensure that there is at least a timeline and some certainty moving forward, which we know is going to be all the more important moving forward now.
Thank you. Richard, you may potentially have some questions.
Yes, I've got a couple of questions. I mean, thank you for that clarification, Johnson, that by its very nature, CPO is about land ownership and so not about the tenants in the shopping centre. I think it's very useful as a clarification. Obviously, though, if the CPO powers are used for other landowners in the area, such as Network Rail or Archco, it potentially has a knock-on impact on their tenants. Do you know what conversations have been had with the tenants of Arches 6 and 127/133 that are detailed in paragraph 36 of the report? So that's the first question. The second question is paragraph 67 states that it may nevertheless be necessary as part of the finalisation of the CPO to make minor amendments to the draft CPO map. And obviously recommendation 2 delegates agreement of any of those arrangements to the director rather than cabinet member. And I just wondered whether you thought that perhaps we might want to review that.
Just to come back on the first question, so in terms of detailed conversation with traders and particularly traders within Arch, I know it's been particularly a big challenge, and one thing we've wanted to work with Archco and also Network Rail is how do we support them if arches come available further afield, and those discussions have been positive. By no means have they come to a conclusion, but those discussions have been positive, and it just underlines the more wider point, which is our commitment to supporting the traders is not something that will end tomorrow. It needs to continue over the next few months and indeed post the shopping centre closing as well. So we're absolutely committed to the traders within the Arch, and we're having active discussions both with the landowners, and I know also the Lancia having active discussions as well in respect of how you come to a resolvement. In respect of the delegation, it's been delegated to the Director of Regeneration, but in all circumstances, it will be in consultation with the relevant cabinet member as well. So I'm pretty relaxed about whether we formalise it or not, but it will be in consultation with it will be in discussion with the relevant cabinet member.
I mean, obviously, if it's a couple of centimetres here or there, nobody's going to worry too much. But if it was a whole new arch or something else like that being brought in, I think that probably needs to come back in some sort of form.
Just to provide the background behind that, because one of the key things that we've said on the CPO decision is recognising that there are a number of things that need to happen before we have a fully implementable planning decision, such as the delivery of Castle Square, which is absolutely important. So as part of the report, we've also recognised that this CPO will only be carried out once you have a fully implementable planning permission, which is important. In terms of how we amend the recommendation, I'm pretty happy to have it in consultation with the relevant cabinet member, and for any major amendments, which it's very unlikely, it will happy for it to come back to cabinet as well.
Thank you.
I mean, you could just looking at 2.2D. It could be make any minor amendments, deletions, or amendments. Just include that word minor.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful,
because that would seem to overcome your concern that suddenly there would be a significant change that is undertaken by the director. Okay, thank you very much indeed for those questions. Nobody else has indicated on this, so there are, as we've just been through, 2 recommendations for us to agree here, subject to that amendment, inserting the word minor into 2.2D after make any. And I hope that that's been recorded by the team. Okay, can we agree those recommendations? Thank you very much, Virginia. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Agreed?
Agreed.
Anybody against? Any abstentions? Excellent, thank you very much indeed. And then the final report on Elephant Castle Shopping Centre is interference with property rights, which is a kind of report that we've seen quite a lot of as a council in recent times. Over to you, Johnson.
Yes, as you know, Chair, it is a report that we have seen quite a bit of. I should first start by thanking all of the officers who have worked on all three reports as well. I know a few of them will be on the call, Patrick, John, Steve, all of the Regen team in terms of putting this together. I particularly want to bring them in if they have any points to bring in on this particular report. But in short, this report asks Cabinet to authorises under the Town and Country Planning Act, which enables nearby residents to the development to have the right to financial compensation, reflecting any losses in their value, but will mean that they're unable to stop the development from happening.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it's the kind of report that we have seen previously in respect of many other developments, including our own around the borough. Nobody's indicated to speak. Any officer have anything to add to this? As I say, it is a kind of report that we have seen and we're familiar with. Okay, well, there are 6 recommendations on page 235 to 236. So can we agree the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Anybody against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, item 26. We have a very long agenda today, but we are getting through it. So the draft loneliness strategy. Who is this?
Chair. It's me.
It's Evelyn. Thank you.
Thank you. So our council plan, our current council plan, committed us to developing a loneliness strategy to help address the health inequalities. We know that loneliness impacts on the health and well-being of our residents, and this piece of work is actually needed more now than ever. The accompanying report asks members to sign off the final consultation starting in April. However, we know that's going to slip. So there's an additional recommendation for the leader for you to delegate the final decision for the timing of the draft loneliness strategy to myself.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. Any comments on this? Nobody has indicated. So there are 2 recommendations on page 250 and in the addendum report. So there's an amendment deleting, as Evelyn indicated, in the second recommendation, the timing starting from April 2020. So that's been removed. So subject to that amendment, can we agree those 2 recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Anybody against?
Agreed.
And any abstentions? No. And then there's a recommendation for me to delegate the final decision for the timing of the draft loneliness strategy to the Cabinet Member Community Safety and Public Health following the creation of an updated consultation calendar. Okay. Right, some gateway ones. Procurement strategy approval, main contractor, procurement Queen's Road 4. This is either Vicky or Kieran.
I think it's me.
Okay, Kieran.
So this is the contractor to deliver our new custom design building for our frontline services on Queen's Road to house our housing options service and many of our children's services as well. So this is going through a process where we are already in an arrangement with a design and build contractor, and it's confirming that they are the best option to provide the build section for it as well. As this is a design and build process, we've looked very hard at benchmarking the costs that they're putting against us against other costs for delivering similar floor space, and it's come out at very good value for money for the building we're getting. So I recommend the report to you. I'm not sure if the officers are on the line and want to add anything specifically on the value for money, which is the important point here.
Okay, who's our relevant officer on this one?
Well, I can say it's Michael Scorer here. I can.
Hello, Michael.
Hello. Got my tie on.
Well done. You and Richard are keeping the side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is as Kieran said, this is as Councillor Williams has said, this is a really important building for our service delivery. for the two services that Councillor Williams has mentioned. What I would say is that although we're looking at single supplier, there is significant competition in the process that we are undertaking through the supply chain, and we are taking an open book approach where we're seeing throughout that supply chain how the prices have been competitively tendered for different elements of the build work. So I am very confident that we are getting extremely good value for this. That's been tested. It's also been measured against industry standards across all kinds of buildings of this type. So that's the reason I'm confident to say that we're getting good value for money for a building that we really need. It helps us get out of places like Bournemouth Road, which are way past their best, really, and not great for our residents who need to use those services. So very pleased to see that we could move on with this.
Thanks very much indeed, Michael. No one else has indicated to speak, so there are two recommendations on this report on page 255. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Can I hear agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Anybody against? And any abstentions? No, don't think that was an abstention, just a child crying. Okay, good. 28, procurement strategy approval, MMC contractor services of the new homes, rooftop developments and associated works framework. This is on page 271 of the agenda. Leo. Your silence. We can't hear you.
Right, here I am,
yep.
Unmuted. Sorry about that. So we have a great ambition to be bringing forward rooftop developments, which is now gaining pace. We have consultations starting on over 24 estates across the borough, with a pipeline of potentially several hundred council homes to be built in this way in the year ahead. This follows our adoption late last year of key development principles for rooftop building that are designed to maximise the benefits and minimise the impacts to residents. And the first of those principles is to carry out as much of the building work off-site in factory settings, and to then install or crane those near completed homes onto adapted blocks to minimise the period of on-site construction and any inconvenience and nuisance to residents. So this procurement report is all about providing a key route to delivering rooftop housing against this principle. So it's a new modular framework for building off-site housing with the London Housing Consortium, who we're also partnering with on our new architect framework, and offers a number of established high quality approved building factories that will be ready to serve London and the South East in exactly the way that we want. I should add as well, there are a number of fairer future procurement framework details that are quite important here, given that a lot of the work will be happening outside of our borough, but there's a number of details that make sure that we have the best labour standards and the maximum community benefits from each project. And then we'll be evaluating builders on the basis of the quality of their liaison with residents, so that contractors offer the most smooth and responsive construction process as is possible, and that we have the needs of residents living in the host block given the highest priority. I think that's all.
Thank you very much indeed. Steph Crown has a question.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute them for some reason. Yeah, just a quick one. Under the economic considerations, it's saying under paragraph 95 that we would be seeking the appointed contractor to participate in local employment and training initiatives in line with our economic wellbeing strategy, and that would conform to any local government policy. But there's nothing specific in there around apprenticeships at all. And we do have obviously a policy that for every £1 million worth of contract, that at least one apprenticeship should be delivered through that. But it's not coming out really clear in this report, and I'm just checking that that would still be the case on this.
It would be the case, because we have made reference to our commitment to ensuring that this is complying with the Fairer Futures procurement strategy, and we make some reference to that in paragraph 94 as well, in terms of London living wage and a couple of other details. But if we need to clarify that, I think that's important. it is worth mentioning that a lot of this work will not be happening inside the borough, but there's an awful lot of on-site work that this certainly will apply to.
Thanks. I think though, even if it's not in borough, we should try and seek a commitment to employ, take on apprentices from within Southwark anyway.
Okay. I wonder if that's something to include in the evaluation criteria for the tenders that we put out, or up to you, Peter, whether it requires another recommendation. I think it's a good idea.
Can
I would have thought it's implicit because it's a council policy. I would have thought it's implicit within it, but Doreen, you're going to.
I was just going to come in there, Chair, and say that any procurement will be done via our Fair Futures procurement framework, which is now in place, and that will guide the way the procurement is done, which is very specific, as Councillor Crine has mentioned. And also, don't forget, we will have to pick up the social value element in the tendering process as well. So I think, as Councillor Crine mentions, I think it is covered in the procurement through the procurement process. Chair.
Okay, well, can we record it in the minutes in any event that Councillor Crine did ask that question, so there is a record of it. Okay, there are 3 recommendations on page 271 to 272. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Anybody against? Any abstentions? No? Thank you very much. Well, that's agreed. New key worker housing powers at Churchyard Row, page 291.
That's me. So this is a really important new step for us as a council. This paper sets out proposals to provide intermediate rent council homes for key workers in our borough, using some properties that we have on Churchyard Road down near Elephant and Castle. A really important step in providing meeting a need in the borough that is little met, and particularly at a time like this when we're all in the country so reliant on key workers, making sure people can afford to live in our borough for the long term is incredibly important. So I thoroughly recommend the paper to Cabinet. One point I will add is, in the immediate short term, for the next few months, we will be using these homes to help house some people who had shared facilities in their current accommodation. So that will be the short-term use of them, as I think some of the amendments make clear. But over the long term, we will move to making them key worker housing for medical, teaching and social work professionals.
Thanks, Kieran. Really, really good news and very important part of the community that we're providing housing for. Okay, nobody's indicated on this. There are 4 recommendations on page 291 to 2. So can we agree those 4 recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Fantastic. Agreed. Okay. Anybody against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you very much. Okay. Onwards, we move to a Community Harm and Exploitation Reduction Plan 2020 to 21.
Thank you, Chair. And I must say, I'm really happy that we've got this far with this report. Just to say that inside that we are seriously committed to doing everything we can to reduce the scourge of knife crime and serious youth violence in our community. And it's important for us that we work with the community and young people to find longer lasting solutions. The Community Harm and Exploitation Reduction Plan is a comprehensive one and brings together all the recommendations that we've had with the various panels and meetings that we've had. So it brings together the cross-party panel on serious youth violence recommendations. And this panel was talking to young people and the community at large about their concerns and their recommendations to improving the issue. It brings also together the Southwark Extended Learning Review, and this was done by the Violence and Vulnerability Unit, which worked closely with central government, and they reviewed our internal processing with dealing with knife crimes. And it was great to see that we've got excellent processes in place, but their recommendation was for us to streamline this. It also brings together the Southwark Youth Violence JSNA into a single plan of action and delivery. To note, the action plan also includes mandatory areas currently set out by the Mayor's London Violence Reduction Unit. So we have everything incorporated in this plan. A central part of this plan is the creation of a community harm and exploitation hub. And this will be a multi-agency team that incorporates and builds upon the existing work done by the Southwark Anti-Violence Unit. And the Southwark Anti-Violence Unit normally works with individual young people to wrap around, give them wraparound service. This hub is intended to look and wrap around and work with the whole family as a unit. And normally, I would say that the family as a team is neglected, over the single person. And I think it's important that we deal with the family going forward. And so I bring this report to you, and a lot of work has been done, and a lot of work has still been done to create the hub and to make sure that this reduction plan does what it says.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Evelyn, for that. It's mostly in reflection on the current difficult time, and I guess we've all been inspired by the way community groups and loosely based community groups have stepped up, and I wondered, is there an opportunity to review or have a look at the action plan to say, well, there's a number of community groups, a number of individuals who have stepped up and got involved in their communities. Will there be an opportunity to get them more involved?
That's a very good question, and something I would take back to officers. I mean, currently what we are doing, and I've been speaking with my team, I'm speaking with the youth, our young people that work with us, to look at what we can do post COVID-19. Because for me personally, I do think we're going to stumble across a number of issues after we come through this crisis, and it will be a lot on mental health. It will be about how young people are coping at home. It will be about the fact that a lot of the services have been kind of stopped and frozen as we're dealing with the crisis. So what I'm talking to officers about is that how do we kind of collect the information? I know that young advisors are calling and speaking to young people right now, kind of gauging the situation that they need help. And what I'm asking officers to do is let's collate all this information so that we can put in an action plan after we come through this crisis about how we help our young people. But yes, it's something for us to also look at what can the wider community do to support this work.
Thank you very much indeed, Evelyn. Okay, brilliant. Great. There are two recommendations in the addendum report for us to agree. Can we agree these, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Anybody against?
Well done, Evelyn.
Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we move to a trio of social regeneration charters, which were referenced earlier on in the public question. They're all very different because they're very different areas. Walworth, Bermondsey in the blue, and Borough and Bankside. But Leah, do you want to kind of introduce them and tell us a bit more about what lies behind each of these?
Sure. Thank you, Peter. I'm being pressured to give a one-line summary for these, so I'm going to try and canter through as best I can. So in brief, the social regeneration charters are documents that bring together a plan that describes how we will measurably reduce the health, housing and economic inequalities in our borough, and it also describes how we'll ensure that the top-down strategies and plans of big institutions like the council, CCG, TfL, developers and big service providers are properly aligned with the bottom-up needs and initiatives of the community, so that they're captured in one common vision and then supplemented by the community investment plans that are being rolled out through the work that Johnson's been overseeing. So these are three reports. Am I presenting all three in one go?
Yes,
Peter, or
yeah,
one at a time?
we have to vote on them separately, but introduce all three. It would be helpful.
I'll do all three. So the Walworth Charter, which covers most of Newington, most of North Walworth and Faraday Ward, has been put together over the last few months with all of the big community organisations across Walworth contributing. It's been a huge amount of input into it, and a big focus on the high street there in particular. The consultation plan, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, which will be extended and amended we'll have a particularly significant emphasis on the input of local TRAs and estate residents, because we want to make sure that they're benefiting from development and change in the neighbourhood. Things to draw attention to here will include that there's a big emphasis on making sure that we've got high quality, healthy environments, that we have a resilient economy and a strong high street that's providing good employment and skills development opportunities for local residents. Local councillors working with local residents have added another key theme here, which is to make sure that there are measures to support safety in the area and reduce antisocial behaviour. I should add as well that the charters, I should have said this at the top, set out the themes and criteria that are used by us as Cabinet and local councillors to assess how the applications for spending community infrastructure levy will be spent. There are a number of things in the Walworth Charter that are really exciting, meeting the entire registered housing needs of Walworth, particularly obviously the changes that have been made in the last few months and years to the Aylesbury estate regeneration, bring forward a lot more social rent housing, are going to be really important. There's very many new council home schemes coming forward, and a lot of partnership emphasis as well in terms of the different community organisations that we're seeing doing such amazing work in the midst of the current crisis in Walworth. So that's the Walworth one. For Bermondsey and the Blue, it's again another strong.
That was one line, was it?
Emphasis on improvements in there. That was my one line. Okay. Molly Bloom
must have been lots of commas. Yeah.
I'll be really brief.
Okay.
So Bermondsey and the Blue, obviously a big emphasis on the Blue itself as a high street and civic space for the area. Big emphasis on environmental projects to make sure that we're improving air quality and combating climate change. And a huge emphasis on improving estates and bringing forward new council homes. We have no fewer than 17 new council home sites in the area that's covered by this social regeneration charter. And Borough and Bankside has been, again, huge input that's gone into this, several very well attended walkabouts, lots of involvement of local councillors and initiatives that are focused on celebrating the unique heritage and culture of the area, including careful visitor management. Lots of initiatives to improve the greening of the area and improve air quality. You have obviously institutions like Bankside Open Spaces Trust who've been doing brilliant work on that for a very long time. Forgive me. Well-being measures as well as new community spaces that will help integrate people from different backgrounds and incomes and new amenities, new affordable housing. And I should add that we put in for planning 24 new council homes in the midst of the coronavirus crisis in Bankside next to Southwark Tube only last week. So all of this is still live, the momentum is still going. That's that.
Thank you very much indeed, Leo. Steph Crown has a question on the Borough and Bankside social regeneration.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, can I say, Leo, I think it's absolutely amazing. The number of social regeneration charters that are coming up, and you know, our commitment to them, and then residents' commitment to them is absolutely fantastic. I suppose the one thing that is, for me, I think is missing from the Borough and Bankside one is that every other social regeneration charter we has had some commitment to jobs, apprenticeships, internships, and this is the only one that doesn't. Now, it does worry me because we have some of our biggest employers in the borough based in Borough and Bankside. There are also 2 bids that cover that area, and a total absence of any commitment to jobs and employment does seem a bit strange to me, and it is the only one that isn't. So I'm just wondering whether we can, when it goes out to further consultation, actually capture that, because there are lots of estates where people do need jobs and they do need employment. I absolutely agree with everything else in there. I think it's really important, but I just think we've missed something on this one.
Thanks, Steph. I actually completely agree with you. This has been probably the most community-led writing of a draft, and draft is the key word here, social regeneration charter of them all, and it is absolutely a key item that's not included here. So we'll make absolutely sure during that consultation that we're engaging with local states and TRAs, and crucially with the bids as well. I think it's going to be even more important as the restrictions are lifted and the economy recover, particularly given that there's so many businesses that depend on footfall and cash to pick themselves up, that we have that extra focus. So really good point, and definitely one to pick up in the consultation.
Thanks, and I don't want to distract from all the really good stuff that's in there, because I think it's absolutely amazing. I think the community have done such good work around it and identified some really key things. I just think that if we added it to it, would enhance it a lot more as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steph, and thank you, Leo, for introducing these. And they are really important. It's all about demonstrating to our residents that they are the true beneficiaries of the physical regeneration that is happening about them. And it's been an integral part of our ambition for the last 4 years. Okay, and it's great to see it now being delivered in this form. So on the Walworth Social Regeneration Charter, and I know Rebecca Lurie is really pleased as a local ward councillor with this. She's commented in it on the meeting chat that we have recommendation 1 on page 303, addendum report. Can we agree the draft Walworth Social Regeneration Charter, please, to go to consultation? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Anybody against? None. Anybody abstaining? No. Okay, then we have the draft Social Regeneration Charter for Bermondsey and the Blue with page 310 and recommendations 1 and 2 on the addendum report, with those updated recommendations agreeing the geographies of the Social Regeneration Charters as set out in the map attached, and to commence formal consultation on the Bermondsey and the Blue as amended Appendix 2 to the addendum report. Can we agree that those recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? And then the Borough and Bankside Social Regeneration Charter. 1 recommendation on the addendum report to agree to commence formal consultation. Can we agree that, please?
Agreed.
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 Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? No. Fantastic. Okay. Item 33, Gateway 1 Alternative Provision Procurement Strategy. I think this is going to be Jasmine.
Is this for the closed session? Or?
No, alternative provision open session.
Oh, okay. So I started off. Okay. Yeah. We've got a statutory responsibility to arrange suitable education for all school-age children, as you know. Keeping children in education is one of our most important considerations, but alternative provision isn't just a PRU, you know, it's basically, it takes on a multitude of forms, and alternative provision is for people that may be excluded, but it's also for pupils that the school at the time is not meeting their needs. So we have to be creative and innovative, and our department is creative and innovative about that. So really, we want to put a framework in place, because a lot of this, we've done quite well with it, but it's been spot purchased. So, you know, we're having to, you know, what we want to do with this is to formalise it, put it in a new framework. I'm not going to talk about any costs at the moment, because there'll be a closed session because it's commercially sensitive, but it looks like a sensible thing to be doing, and it doesn't, you know, it's fully in keeping with our keeping children in education strategy, really. So I'm work with officers on it, and I think we should approve it, but willing to say more in the closed session if you want.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Steph Cran has a COVID-related question.
Yeah, Jasmine, in terms of the children who this would benefit from, given that schools are closed now and many of them will be in a situation where they're not going to be able to, you know, continue their education at home for various reasons, what are we doing as a local authority to ensure that they're not missing out on their education during this time?
Well, David's on the call, and he will tell you that teachers are still being paid. So, at the moment, the education department, as I explained to Vicky, has been very much around sheltering, getting key worker education, but we still have teachers employed. So, we'll still be able to work with this really. There's no need that if people need alternative provision, that we can't work around that and try and meet that need. We've seen, tremendous innovation. And, as Vicky will say, I'm sure, that some schools are better than others, but that doesn't mean to say, once we've got all the, the infrastructure in place, I before E, we've got the infrastructure in place. It took about a week. And so now we can look at enabling and getting more sophisticated with the actual learning. And obviously, we're not going to let anyone slip between our fingers. We're Southwark.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. I've got a question because I was asked about it today and I wasn't aware of it, but apparently the Good Law Project are talking about legal proceedings against Southwark Council because we're going to have too many children who don't have access to computers or laptops who will be excluded from education and can't do distance learning during this period. Which it sounded to me rather like something that you would raise in a conversation before you start legal proceedings, but that's a matter for the Good Law Project and whoever else is behind that. Have we been approached by any schools who have concerns about children who might be excluded from distance learning? I know this is not completely on subject, but it's relevant as we talk about education.
I mean, it's absolutely important because things are moving really, really quickly. And as I said, some schools are doing better than others. But there is an important point, Leader, and that is a lot of schools, like the schools that my children go to, they don't want to have people or their pupils constantly on iPads or computers. A lot of the work coming through is on exercise books. And I think equally, we can make sure that people are kitted out, but equally you'd want a balance. You wouldn't want it to be all online, and neither would, in this day and age, you would want it to be all on exercise books, but you must achieve a balance. I'm surprised. I haven't heard about that, but obviously as soon as I come off this call, I'll explore. I know David's in the room and I wonder if he's heard anything about that.
David, you said no as a short answer, but do you want to say anything as well about that? Because I think it's just worth, yes. As I said, I'm baffled as to why people don't contact us rather than go to the Guardian first of all, but there we are.
Yes, Leader, very happy to make a brief comment on that. So I can confirm to Cabinet that we have not been approached, neither Nina Doyle, who's the Director of Education, or I have been approached by either the Good Law firm or the school that's mentioned in that Guardian article with any concerns whatsoever about their pupils during this period. And just to put it in context, almost 3/4 of our schools are still open, supporting the children of key workers, children open to a social worker, and children with special educational needs. The teachers who are not directly teaching are actively supporting parents and children at home with their learning. And I would just note that the case that's been made is for laptops and tablets and internet access. We still also believe in books in education, and we still also believe in resources that have been provided to children and families to support their education. I can absolutely reassure Cabinet that the team in our education department are working extremely hard every day to ensure that our children and families get the support that they need, and we will continue to do that right throughout this crisis, including over the Easter holidays, because that's the arrangements we've put in place.
Thank you, David. That's very reassuring. Vicky Mills.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Jasmine and David for the reassurance there. I just wanted to highlight that actually St Thomas the Apostle in Nunhead did feel very strongly that their young men did need kind of devices and tablets to do lots of the learning that was being asked of them. And actually they've run a brilliant community fundraising campaign, which has raised, I think, kind of £15,000-20,000. It's amazing. But I think that the suggestion that people should be making approaches to us if they have particular concerns, knowing that your door is open, Jasmine's door is open, I think is absolutely the right one to do. But equally, it's great that some schools have really stepped up to the plate and gone and asked their community for support.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well,
Thanks.
I think that's probably as far as we can take that in, because we take that decision in closed session, which will be moved to soon. Then we've got Vicky staying with you. Disposal of freehold 4 Danesford Road, London, SE5, just to introduce an open session.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I'm another one who's on about 4 different screens, so just bear with me a second. We've talked a lot about people having access to high quality housing today. So actually people having access to high quality housing when they're of need of care in the later stages of life is incredibly important. The quality of residential care homes is obviously very much in the news at the moment. So we committed to opening 2 new residential care homes in the borough between 2018 and 2022. By disposing of our freehold interest in Danesford Road today, we're able to begin the process of the second care home starting to take shape here in Southwark. The arrangement means that we dispose of the freehold, we alter the lease so that XL Care are able to develop the building further, and they will develop a 80+ bed residential care home, and we, as part of the arrangement, will kind of effectively be able to kind of have first dibs on the beds there for our residents. But I don't know whether if Matt's on the call or David want to, or Jasmine want to add to that at all.
Jasmine wants to add something. Yep.
I just wanted to be very quick, really. I mean, basically, I spoke to Jeanette today, and obviously David's in the room, so he can add. But it was felt that we're really unlocking this now, because obviously we're working, well, we're in an emergency situation, but we're working with XL Care. And also, I wanted to say, if there were any doubts, they're really stepping up to the plate now. They're like working above and beyond in this emergency crisis, proving that they are just the kind of people we want to work with, looking after our most vulnerable adults.
That's really reassuring.
I don't know whether it's, I mean, there are various, obviously kind of, I need to tread carefully, but, you know, care providers will be under huge financial pressures at this particular time. And some care providers are not going to almost certainly survive the pressures of the next few months. There are various things written into this contract. I don't know whether if somebody wants to speak on that a little bit now, just to give us reassurance that the decision that we're making today is financially robust going forward.
I'm happy to make a comment on the financial stability.
Yes, please, David.
Just to reassure Cabinet that the LGA and ADAS and the Department of Health and Social Care have been looking at the impact of this current crisis on adult social care providers very carefully. And we were expecting guidance imminently that we've had an opportunity to feed into to stabilise and secure the sector, because, as Councillor Mills says, it has been a fragile sector for quite some time, and we absolutely recognise that we need to do something about that. And some funding has been made available to help with that. On this provider in particular, and on this deal in particular, what I can say is that we have been in discussions, and we have been reassured that this is still the right course of action to pursue, and that all the key aspects and elements remain sound.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's probably as far as we can take it in open session. My cat is joining me. Hello. Yeah, no, he wants to take over. That's fine. Okay, we've got our final report in open session, is acquisition of new housing at Harper Road. Vicky.
It's me as well.
Yeah.
This proposes that we acquire 10 new housing units at Harper Road, which is I think just off or very near Borough High Street. We have 2 effectively tiny parcels of land that are part of this site. By disposing of them, we allow the development to kind of proceed, and the transfer of those and a capital sum to the developer will mean that we can acquire 10 much needed new housing units here.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Vicky. Any comments? No, I can see in open session. Okay, well, we have now to move to closed session. So it's the end of open business. So we have to move that the press and public be excluded. Can we agree that, please?
Peter, can I just come in there, please?
Doreen, yeah.
I think the plan is for everyone.
Oh, we're gonna leave. That's right.
To hang up, and then we will get you the appropriate officers dialed in for the closed meetings. So,
thank you. Okay, so we don't. Well, we need to move the motion.
Virginia will take responsibility to get you back into the closed session.
Okay. Well, can I thank everyone who's joined us for this open part of the meeting? As I say, it's been the first meeting that we've conducted in Southwark in this way. And I hope that you think it's been a success. We've covered a lot of ground, and obviously we're living in extraordinary circumstances. I want to take two things. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much to all of our council staff who are working literally day and night to support our residents and some of our most vulnerable residents. And obviously some of our staff are paying a very heavy price in terms of their own health and welfare and lives. And we think of them day in, day out, as we're all working, I hope, for the people of our borough. They remain in our thoughts, and the thoughts of all of our residents are absolutely in our hearts at this time. So thank you very much indeed to all our staff for all you're doing. Anyone who is watching, please stay safe, please stay well, please follow the guidance from the government, stay home unless it's really essential that you leave your home. So thank you for what you're doing to help us tackle this crisis, this disease, and together we will come through it stronger as a borough and as a city. So thank you, and we'll see you again at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.